Hello, 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 hello. Hey, test. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, testing, 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 testing. Hello, 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 hello. Test, test, test.
Hello, hello, hello. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments. With these lines of Rabindranath Tagore, I wish you all a very good morning and welcome you all to India's colonial story, Terms of Trade and the Long Shadow of Empire, by Urzu Media Solutions in collaboration with India Pride Project and the Museum of British Colonialism. This discussion is not intended to debate whether India should trade with Britain. India and the United Kingdoms have already entered into a free trade agreement. The objective of this dialogue is to explore a broader question. How should a confident and economically stronger India engage with legacy of colonialism while shaping its future relationship with Britain? Now, I would like to felicitate our organizing committee for the day. For the same, I would like to call Ms. Divya Bhatia ma'am on the stage to felicitate our organizing committee, Professor Sukhdev Singh, the former chairperson of Intact. Professor Sukhdev Singh, please sir. Now, I would like to call on the stage Mr. Gyaneshwar sir. He's a well renowned documentary filmmaker. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. For the very first special address for the day, I would like to call on the stage Mr. Vijay Kumar from India Pride Project for his special presentation. Please, sir.
खुली हुई है लैप
Good morning, everyone. Many thanks for this august opportunity, distinguished guests, sponsors, and organizers. I know it's a bit of a unique occasion where we get to present what can be done, and I hope you have an open mind, because what you're going to see are stories of loss of a community that is now ready to receive their gods. I named this project the India Pride Project, basically to restore India's pride, one Murti, one artifact at a time. Our role as India Pride Project, we are volunteers, all of us have day jobs. Our only role is to work on restitution of stolen objects. You can look at our work by the hashtag Bring Our Gods Home. We've been working on this domain for 20 plus years now. To put things in perspective, India brought back 19 antiquities from 1970 to 2000. 2000 to 2012, it was zero. 2013 onwards, we have physically cost 638, and another 1,200 are en route to India. So we hope to touch 1,200 in this. So the reasons of these successes: we are a pro bono organization. We don't take any funding, any awards or rewards. You don't see our names anywhere. We don't take credit. Our idea is the gods choose the time and the vehicle. We are one such vehicle. We work on these 5 aspects. Of course, restitution. A lot of people talk about the Prime Minister was gifted an artifact on his tour. You give something that you own. So today we are going to see what actually is the term to be used. It's restitution. And again, like today, we are going to talk about building awareness. We work as deterrent. We work in capacity building. We influence policy. We routinely train customs officers around the world to spot the illicit antiquities trade, which is still ongoing. I'd like to start with an example, because I know a lot of people will have these questions. Is India able to take care of these when they come back home? They are so nicely exhibited in museums. Our gods never wanted focus lights or air conditioning. The tender loving care of the priests and devotees was enough. There was one such group, Rama, Lakshmana, Sita and Hanuman, that was stolen from a temple in Karaikal in 1978. We tracked it to a British dealer. These were on sale as curios, price tagged. And once we presented them the evidence, because we had pre-theft in situ photographs, on August 15th of 2018, in the Indian High Commission in London, this happened, the formal restitution ceremony. You can see the murtis are slowly becoming the gods that they once were. And 2 years later, they went back to the same temple from where they were stolen. The priest, old priest under whose guard this was left, was still there. And they were graced with the scents of incense and flowers. And this is what we mean by restoration, restitution, reparative justice, whatever you call. And this is our only payday. A lot of people look at our murtis as commodities. So I want to show that these murtis back home are living gods. In Tamil, the state I am from, Tamil Nadu, we call them Tirumeni, which literally translates to body of God. So I'm just showing you. Compare that. A living God who is being bathed, clothed, sung to, ceremoniously put to sleep in his own sleeping quarters, commodified. This is an actual auction happening in New York, where our gods are being ridiculed, made commodities. And more importantly, not all of these end up in museums. Most of them end up in private collections, and this is an indoor swimming pool that you're seeing. Our Koshtamurtis and gods are not meant to line the swimming pool of the rich and famous. And this is the ignominy that our gods suffer in the hands of private collectors. And once what happens, this is again from UP, a set of yoginis, which is very rare, 64 yogini temples, were stolen, and we were chasing it for 42 years. Finally, we got a lead from a friend in London, outskirts of London in a property. It was used as a garden furniture. We managed to get him back. This is another smuggler, dealer, collector who now sadly passed away, Douglas Latchford's apartment in Bangkok. This is his birthday party in 2014. You can see the number of Indian artifacts and murtis in his home. So what happens? So this was a book that was published by India and France, by the French Institute. We rely on the French Institute's in situ photographs, which they did in the 1950s for proof. And this was one such event. So here, I want to show you what happens when the actual restitution happens. This murti was stolen sometime in the 1970s, 69 to be precise. and came back from Australia. And the priest who gave us the lead unfortunately passed away. His son is here receiving the icon. To translate, he says, as a young boy, I was with my father when we bathed him, and he's so overcome with emotion that on getting him back, this is actually in the court, when a court-monitored process is handing over the rights to the temple. So now, that's the context. Now, a lot of people talk about to give or not give, but miss out the key word, give it back. What is interesting for us to set the context right? So I'm going to show you a few examples of colonial loot where the context has been changed. So all of us have been, most of us have known about the British Museum's collections of the famed Amaravati limestones. Greece has been fighting them for the Parthenon marbles or the Elgin marbles as it's called. I would call these Elliot limestones. These were split, entire stupa was split into 3 parts, one portion left in Chennai Museum, one portion in Calcutta, and the best was shipped to UK, where it lay on an open wharf for 8 months. But what happened before that? So this is an officer's noting before the removal. And I'm going to read out certain portions from Sergeant Henry Cole's note. I submit that the province of the Archaeological Survey is to write ancient history and not to go about the country pilfering tons of sculptures from well-known monuments. This is a British officer writing to his superiors. And he says, I believe, moreover, the policy of preserving ancient monuments for India is a sounder one than carting them away to European museums. The 121 Elliot marbles arrived in London in 1860 and remained in a wharf for almost a year, as I told you. Currently, they are housed inside a glass case sponsored by a Japanese businessman. Bereft of context, bereft of where they are. People who are seeing it appreciate only the art, but we don't even know what it pertains to, where they would have originally been. So we have many such cases. We have seen a lot of these objects spirited away. But it's not just the British always. This is the case of a Danish colony. Many people will not know that India had a Danish colony in Trankebar, Danishkodi. So what happens is the Danish collector Peter Anker gets a grant to redo or fortify his fort on the seashore for 2 years. And as he's digging, he comes across a buried hoard of 30-odd items, including these bronzes. The official version is he paid the locals, took it back with him, sold it to the Prince of Denmark. They are currently on exhibition in the Royal Museum in Denmark. But what did he actually do? So the actual noting clearly says that he paid the locals a bag of rice and some betel nuts. They cried, and he said, this is recorded, there is no temple nearby that can receive its gods. What you're seeing on screen is a drone photo of the fort as it stands today. So this is Peter Anker's fort, and there to the extreme left, as it comes into view, that's a 9th century Chola temple, not even 500 meters from where he claimed that there was no temple, which is still standing today. So this is another case of Karnataka sculptures. 80 odd were initially taken away by a Jesuit priest called Leventhal. He wrote to the Raja of Mysore. We didn't get permission initially. He went to the locals despite being told not to take these gods. He gave them a pair of spectacles for 20 odd sculptures. So this is the context we want to say. These were removed by the so-called colonizers and others under duress. What constitutes loot? So here is one of the earliest objects of colonial loot that we have researched for. An early British officer stationed in Calcutta was stifled by the heat and pollution at that time and he goes on a boat ride on the Hooghly. He wants to pick some oysters. So he goes to Sagar Island, which even today Bengalis would know, it's a very important religious site. Comes back with this Vishnu Murthy, currently in the V&A. His diary noting gives the date on which he visited Sagar Island and picked this Vishnu Murthy. And that's the diary noting that we have researched. Dates back to 1683. So we've got a long way of plunder happening. So what happens when looting happens? This is, a lot of you have heard about Mahabalipuram, the famous Pallava site. So this used to be a Shiva temple. So a British collector took away the Shivalinga, and the next collector took away the Nandi in front. And the guy who took the Nandi is Lord Clive, not the Clive, but his son. Less intellectually capable, I believe. And both of them are missing. And this, the locals kept a Ganesha statue inside, and today we know this temple as a Ganesha temple, forgetting the fact that it was originally a temple for Shiva. And this is Clive's mansion. We are still searching if he still has the Nandi in the UK. We have not been able to find out. Also, we have had good intentions, like for example, there was Major General Charles Stuart, who is called Hindu Stuart. So in Calcutta again, he set up this entire museum of Indian artifacts, because generally whenever the Western world initially looked at our sculptures, they were meant to be grotesque, you know, with fangs and all that. So he said, look, this is a far superior art. So he set up this. But sadly, what happened after he died? But just before he died, he managed to collect some very rare, very, very rare murtis from the Konark temple. Today, this entire set is currently housed in the British Museum, and they bought it from the descendants of Stuart, who, despite his intention to house them in a museum in India, shipped them off into UK, sold it in an auction. The British Museum enforced their right, and they got this entire collection for £5. So not all were also officially behind. So we are going to see this renowned gentleman, Joe Dubriol, who was a French scholar stationed in Pondicherry. Dubriol was a school teacher, wannabe archaeologist, didn't get the response. So he started a scheme where today we have managed to dig from his archives in France a Chinese smuggler in Paris called C.T. Lu, a curator of the Musée Guimet, and Dubriol get into a scheme in 1923. And they say, Dubriol will source Indian sculptures for you. It will be imported into France by Guimet, and C.T. Lu will market them, and they'll split the profits 3 ways. And this is all signed letters, we have copies now. And the profits will be shared equally among the 3 of them, where the Guimet will get its share as idols, not money. Dubriol actually bought an elephant in his house in Pondicherry. That was how he was living. So we're just going to see some of his photographs from this collection. So there is Dubriol from a freshly excavated object, and currently in the Guimet. So these are all the notes that we now have access to. We are working to publish this archive very soon. Between the 3 of them, so this is the so-called tripartite agreement. Between the 3 of them, they ran like Nataraja month. They ran like Stone month. And they were literally plundering arts. Today, you go to any museum, you will see our artifacts with the signature of C.T. Lu. So yeah, we have a long way to go. So this was C.T. Lu's building in Paris. It's called the Red Pagoda. It still exists. This was a floor, Indian-themed floor, where he could house our objects for sale. And here is their catalog. So this was his catalog published in 1936 of our icons. So a lot of this work is ongoing. You will see a lot more restitutions. They managed to hide the origins. We don't know from where he stole all these. These huge sculptures are dispersed around the world. We have tracked of the 28, we have tracked 23 of them. And what do we do? Because the narrative has changed. About 4 years ago, the postal stamp was issued in his honor, in Dubriol's honor. So this is what we do. I'll take 2 more minutes. Is that okay? Okay. So in terms of legal regulations, what happens? So we tend to look at the UN for all global solutions. In 1970, India and Italy actually campaigned the UN to come up with an international statuette. The 1970 UNESCO convention came into place. But as of today, the UN then also did not have that much teeth. so they couldn't put it retrospective. So 1970 is considered by the art market to be some Lakshman Rekha which miraculously washes a stolen object. In my 20 years of work, I've seen thousands of artifacts, Indian artifacts on sale, and everything has provenance paperwork saying it left India in 1969. So I'm saying, you're faking it anyway, put 1959, no? Who matters? So we've had very, very interesting stuff. So why I wanted to present this is, as people who have suffered under colonial rule, I think it's time we push the UN to push this back. I think no longer should 1970 be the watermark. I think we should bring restoration, restitution of stolen artifacts illegally removed from the original owners back as part of an agenda request. There are a lot of organizations that are campaigning, and all of them, like UNRWA, starts 1994. If nobody wants to push it back to colonial period. So what happens because of that? Burden of proof is still on us. We have to work on common law. Common law basically says it all belongs to the crown anyway, so we cannot take a legal recourse. Then there is statute of limitations. Plus, a lot of these illicit collections are going into museums because of gift route. We call it the gift route. So what happens after Panama Papers? You don't want to put your money in the bank. You put it in artifact, put it in free ports. Later, you gift it to a museum, you get 4 years to 5 years tax break. You'll get a hall and one dinner thrown in as well. So how do we decolonize? We need to inform these museums and these custodians that you're holding on to living gods. They can go back to worship. They can and should become the gods that they were once were. For example, this is one of the world's richest person at that time, Norton Simon. In 1972, he paid $1 million for an Nataraja from Pattur. $1 million. And the New York Times, this was the headline. He says, hell yes, I know it's smuggled, so what? So this is the context that still remains. We have not had, so we have tons of, it's just not just UK, it's not colonial powers. We've had objects going into UK, Canada, Australia, Singapore. So we are now working. Things are changing. I think Belgium has come up with new regulations to look at colonial period art. Recently, we had the success of the Chola Charter plates from Leiden that have come back. France also is proposing new changes, because France and Britain are one of the hardest regimes to bring back stolen antiquities, because France has a Napoleonic law that says once anything enters France, even if it's stolen, it cannot leave. So yeah, we can do, so just some data of what's happening, key legislations. I just wanted to just show you what's happening. I told you we have had over 2,000 plus artifacts that are coming back. We worked on this Hanuman that was bought by an Australian diplomat in an auction in America. Thankfully, we managed to track it back. How do we match? So this is an object from Rajasthan, true. It is a ceiling damsel that was stolen. Currently in a museum, was in a museum in Denver. And this is the work that we do. We match every crack, every breakage to prove. So there is a pre-theft photo we work on. The trade is not a harmless, victimless one. What you're seeing on screen is a Barhut Yakshi that was in the market for $15 million. Stolen, it was a registered antiquity. It was a private Kuladevata of a farmer in Satna. The robbers actually cut her, it's 15 feet high. They deliberately used a chainsaw to cut it into 3 parts and got a US restorer to stitch it back. Both of them have been indicted. It's seized by America, will come back soon. But this is a modus operandi of the, so what you're seeing on screen is how Varaha Murthy is deliberately cut by the smugglers. So this is not a victimless thing. I know you're on in Delhi, you'll all seen the famous Buddhist relics that have come back. If you go, you will see this delightful Salabanika returned by the Met Museum. So I was in the Met Museum in June 2016 when I went and looked at her. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Then I noticed a crack in her waist. If you go today, you will see the crack still there. What happened was the bottom was bought by one dealer who's currently serving time, 14 years, Subhash Kapoor in Chennai. He sold the bottom half, and the top half was sold by another dealer, and miraculously Met found them to match. So we showed the proof, and she came back. So we work with citizens. So citizens provide us the inputs, and what you're seeing is just one example. So this was a theft in West Bengal. An officer came to us and told us that, yeah, we have uh, a PhD thesis from a temple. We managed to track his mentor's PhD thesis. This is from 1938. And Google Street View were used to track this sale. This artifact was sale in New York in a dealer. And he had actually taken Google Street View, and we managed to match it. So this was the proof. And I'll end with this. So this is the priest worshipping in the temple. What you're seeing is replicas, but the original stolen murtis are framed and kept on the top. So he's still awaiting it. So we have managed to find one. 3 murtis were stolen. So we will work towards it. There are a lot more that we could speak, but in want of time, I just want to end with these images where we do a lot of good. We need a lot more support. A lot of restitution cases are happening. And lastly, you remember the photo that I showed you of the birthday party? There was this photo that was there. We managed to track back this Krishna, and he eventually returned to India last year. And with that, I'll end. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really enlightening and interesting, especially with the fact that our audience comes from a history background majorly. It was a very well documented presentation. Now I would like Mr. Brijesh Saluja from Urzu Media to felicitate Mr. Vijay Kumar from India Pride Project. Please on the stage, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to introduce you all to our moderator, Miss Richa Jain Kalra ma'am. Miss Kalra is a distinguished media personality with over 23 years of experience in electronic and digital media. She has worked as a principal news anchor and associate editor at NDTV and has been anchoring a wide range of special projects, elections, interviews, and public events. It is amazing to have you here, ma'am. Ma'am, please take a seat on the stage. Now I would like you to get introduced to Dr. Charan Singh, our speaker for the day. Dr. Singh is the CEO and founding director of eGrow Foundation. He is a member of ERDAI Insurance Advisory Committee. He continues to pursue his academic interests by regularly teaching courses on macroeconomics, monetary policy, global economics, and contemporary issues on Indian economy at IIM Vishakhapatnam and IIM Rohtak. It is amazing to have you here, sir. Please take a seat on the stage. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Prasanjit K. Basu. Mr. Basu is an economist by profession and a historian by passion. His book, Asia Reborn, won the Best First Book of the Year award at the Mumbai Lit Fest 2018, and India Reborn is shortlisted for the R.C. Majumdar Prize for Indian History 2026. He was Chief Economist, Southeast Asia and India for Credit Suisse and Chief Asia Economist for Daiwa Securities, 5 years each. Thank you for joining us, sir. Please take a seat on the stage. Our next speaker for the day is Ms. Chandni Jaiswal. Ms. Jaiswal is a communications team member at the Museum of British Colonialism, UK Kenya, a core team member at Karma Heritage, India, and a graduate associate with the Association for Global Political Thought at Harvard University. Her work explores histories of colonialism, memory, and the Indian subcontinent through research and public history. Her research focuses on women's history in early modern India, with particular interests in visual and material culture. It is amazing to have you here, ma'am. Can you please grace the stage with your presence? Our next speaker for the day is Professor Abhijit Das. Professor Das is one of India's foremost international trade policy expert with more than 2.5 decades of experience in WTO negotiations and trade policy. Former head of the Center for WTO Studies at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, he has participated directly in many bilateral and multilateral trade negotiations and has authored several books and research publications, including the acclaimed book titled Strategies in GATT and WTO Negotiations. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Colin Gonsalves. Mr. Colin, sir, is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India and founder of Human Rights Law Network. One of India's leading constitutional and human rights lawyers, he has been associated with several landmark cases relating to labor rights, social justice, civil liberties, and access to justice. Due to really less time, he has been committed to some other projects as well. He will join us shortly. Our next speaker for the day is Professor Prabhu Mohapatra. Professor Mohapatra is the former head of Delhi University Department of History. He has been a teacher of so many teachers we have been taught by. He is one of the leading historians and scholars of labor history and campaigns for the history of vulnerable communities very passionately in his books and texts. It is great to have you here, sir. Please take a stage. Now I would like to hand over the mic to our respected moderator, Ms. Kalra ma'am. Before we hand over the mic for the panel discussion, we also need to felicitate our members, the panel speakers. For the felicitation, I would like to call on the stage our organizing committee, Yaneshwar sir and Professor Sukhdev sir on the stage. Here's to the members felicitating Dr. Professor Mohapatra. To our next speaker, Mr. Abhijit Das. To Ms. Chandni Jaiswal ma'am. Mr. P.K. Basu sir, thank you for joining us today. To our next speaker, Mr. Charan Singh sir. To our moderator for the day, Ms. Richa Kalra ma'am.
First of all, a very warm good morning to you. We are almost stepping into afternoon. Thanks for being here. Before I begin, I would request all of you to kindly put your mobile phones on the silent mode if not already. As we all know, this is a roundtable on India's colonial story, terms of trade, and the long shadow of empire. So today, this discussion brings together legal, economic, historic, artistic, and trade policy perspectives to a subject that continues to shape India's public life. India and Britain we all know, have entered into a new economic agreement called the Free Trade Agreement recently. We need to analyze it, look at it from the lens of colonialism, our past, because it matters. History has a way of traveling with us. We have Mr. Colin Gonsalves. Thank you, sir, for joining the panel. So I believe that history has a way of traveling with us. Every trade agreement has some historical context. Every economic partnership that we forge with other countries have some legacy behind it. The question before us is not why should we look at our past, or to be precise, our colonial past, but how to look at it. India today is no longer the colony that financed the Raj, the British Empire. Today, it stands as one of the world's fastest growing economies, a prominent voice of the global south, and its voice matters in terms of global governance and international trade. And from this comes the confidence to look at our colonial past, not with agony or grievance, but with a sense of maturity, perspective, and introspection. So perhaps the central question before us in this roundtable is, how should India remember the human, the economic, and the institutional cost of colonialism, and how can that memory guide us to a fairly better understanding today, to a more nuanced public conversation? So we today look at history as a body of evidence. This roundtable asks how colonial extraction affected India's industries, trade, systems, and civic life. It also asks can India build stronger institutions for research, public education, and of course, remembrance. Colonialism transformed India's economy, institutions, industries, legal institutes, and society for nearly 200 years. So today's discussion not only focuses on how history shaped us into what we are today, but also understanding history. It can also help shape our future, and hence it matters. India now engages Britain on an equal footing. Some say it's not. We will try to find out that as well with our esteemed panelists. Does this new reality change the way we should engage with our colonial past? Because there are a lot of us, even in this room, who do not know or understand what happened with us. Does that understanding of the past become more important in shaping a stronger and more resilient future? So we are privileged to have with us 6 distinguished speakers, and we've already had the introductions. I would like to invite Professor Abhijit Das to give his presentation. He has some presentation? No. Okay. You'd like to speak?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
from here or there, wherever
You can do it from there also.
Okay. Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very grateful to the organizers for organizing such a relevant and I'm sure a vibrant roundtable, and grateful for inviting me. Many of you would be aware that recently, just a couple of days ago on 15th July, the India-UK CETA, that's what it's called, it's a free trade agreement between the two countries, has started getting implemented. It has provisions which will boost trade, bilateral trade. India's exports will increase, India's imports from UK will increase. And more importantly, it also has provisions which have nothing to do with trade at all. In fact, that is the trend in many of these trade agreements. They are technically called free trade agreements, FTAs. I would prefer to call them free from trade agreements because almost 70 to 80% of the provisions have literally nothing to do with international trade. The pact between India and UK is no different. And since we are talking of colonial legacy and lessons, let's just remind ourselves what any trade agreement is about. Effectively, trade agreements are about grabbing resources and exploring markets to sell your final products. Wasn't that the traditional colonial economy between India and UK? Have things changed today? Yes, in certain respects, things have changed. We've learned lessons about resource extraction, extraction of natural resources, exploitation of land. But what we have failed to recognize, and this failure to recognize is so clearly evident in our agreement with UK, is that grab for resources is just not for physical resources. The grab for resources now extends to grab for data. All of you would be aware, it's a cliche to say that the data is the new oil or data is whatever it is, what fuels the digital economy. All of you would be aware that India is a huge source of data. We would like India's data to be used for creating national digital champions. That can be done if the data generated within India is, in a manner of speaking, shared exclusively with Indian players. That data advantage gets lost if it is shared with all the players all over the world. In particular, the problem is, and that could have been an opportunity, government itself generates huge amount of data. That data can be utilized for creating our own digital champions. What have we done in this trade agreement with UK? We've agreed that both India and UK will try to put as much of government data as possible in public domain. Now, the point to remember is that it is not yet a compulsory mandatory obligation. It is something called a best endeavor obligation. But as we know what happened in the colonial era, countries were not colonized at one go. It was inch by inch, mile by mile, territory by territory. The same thing, I'm afraid, is likely to happen with respect to data. We opened the window whereby government data will, at this juncture, on a best endeavor basis, have to be put in public domain. Anyone can use it, be it a digital player in UK, be it in Silicon Valley. So we lose that comparative advantage. And gradually, if this provision becomes a mandatory provision in other trade agreements, then we've lost the game. And wasn't that colonialism all about? Losing your natural resources to a foreign player. Why has this happened? I do not have a clear answer to this question, but what is very evident to me is that the lessons about our colonial past may have been learned to some extent, but they have not been properly applied when it came to trade negotiations. And data is just one aspect. I will mention another aspect and then I will close. The second aspect is on certain issues which are traditionally called non-trade issues, and there are 3 of them in this agreement with UK: labor, gender, environment. What we've done is we've given the UK government a toehold for having a say in how we implement our domestic laws and regulations in these 3 areas. It's a clear case of ceding some sovereignty for absolutely unidentifiable gains. Was that what 15th August 1947 was all about? That's the question we have to reflect on. So to cut a long story short, the India-UK Free Trade Agreement will certainly boost our exports. Certain calculations made by the UK Department of International Trade suggests that by 2040, our exports to UK could cumulatively increase by about 10 billion pounds, whereas our imports from UK could cumulatively increase by about 15 billion pounds. Now, translated into annual gains, these would imply about 3 to 4 or maybe $5 billion every year. What is our total exports of goods and services? $863 billion. So for an annual increase of about $5 billion, which is not even a drop in the ocean of $863 billion, I'm afraid we have ceded considerable policy space, which could adversely impact our future economic prospects, particularly in the area of digital economy. And then there are some provisions which could have an adverse impact on access to affordable medicine. I will not delve into that at this juncture, but just to raise a red flag. So my surmise is that colonization never ended. What used to be done by armies marching in or navies sailing is now being done through trade agreements. And I'm afraid the countries that were colonized have not adequately learned the lessons, or even if they have learned the lessons, they have not applied it in trade negotiations. So I'm going to stop at that. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your very kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Abhijit Das, for putting it so eloquently. So I want to start with you. With what you've just said, it seems like what is being advertised as a win-win for both economies, India and Britain, India does not stand on an equal footing. Am I right?
It is win-win, absolutely no doubt, but definitely much greater wins for Britain as compared to India. And where I raise the question is the size of win. I'm afraid the size of win is, as I said, not even a drop in the ocean.
Why do you think India has conceded this space? Is it because of our colonial past? Or how did that influence? What is your opinion?
Very difficult to say, but let me just give you one illustration. I mentioned on the non-trade issues. Now, when the negotiations started, some of the prominent officials of the Indian side, they went to town, publicly said that the template of the developed countries, including UK, on non-trade issues is the gold standard. Now, after having said that, do you think we would have had any ground to push back? Absolutely not. So maybe it's part of incorrect strategy. Second, inadequate understanding of long-term impacts of the commitments that we are taking. And the failure to recognize what these trade agreements are all about.
Or are we playing to the gallery for some corporate interests?
I won't say playing to the gallery, but negotiations are about give and take, and there we need to have complete clarity. It's the larger national interest which has to prevail. Business entities in India, they will look after their profits. Their profits could come from within India, from outside, but it's the responsibility of the government to regulate businesses, to negotiate agreements that works best for India.
In your opinion, to just sum it up, it's a win-win, but yes, national interest could have been better safeguarded.
Absolutely. And in particular, long-term national interests.
I want to come to Dr. Charan Singh. Do you agree with this opinion? And how do you think India's colonial experience has come into play into what India has acceded to in the FTA with UK?
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, Professor Sukhdev ji. I wasn't very sure what I'm stepping into, but having come in, I realized destiny brought me to this place. I was a young man, taken admission in Guru Nanak Dev University And the house that we rented in, my father being in army, was from a lady who was working at Heathrow Airport, palatial bungalow in Jalandhar, but she works at Heathrow Airport to clean the lights on the ceiling. My father came from Lalpur, Pakistan. My mother from Sargodha, Pakistan. My mother from the royal family. I was 18 at that time. And since my childhood, listening stories about how the British partitioned India and how our families came, how deaths took place in our families, it is that very day I gave up everything that was British. I don't take tea since that day because tea in India is associated with British. And anything that was British, I gave up. And I thought, like the rich Indians who go and work as maids in their houses, until in India I'm able to employ 2 British servants at my house, I will never take tea again. It has not happened yet, and I don't take tea at all. I may take a rebirth to let that dream come back. Thank you for that presentation that you made on the gods. I totally agree with you. Now come to your question. I don't agree with Professor. The reason is simple. Nothing has changed.
You think it's not a win-win also?
It's not a win-win at all. And I'll give you 2 illustrations. Nothing has changed. They came in 1600 as traders. Today, they have come in India again as traders. What has changed?
But the government is saying that our exports will get greater markets.
Let me finish. In my introduction, they said I was a professor at IIM Bangalore. I was on the RBI chair. My monthly salary was 3 lakh rupees. The lady who used to cook my food at home used to come on a bike, and I asked her a question one day, what's your salary? She said, I work at 6 houses, I earn 30,000 rupees, 1/10 of my salary. The per capita income of Britain today is around $50,000. Per capita income of an Indian today is $2,880. 1/10 of $50,000 is $5,000. I am 5% of the British income. I have studied abroad in Sydney first for 4 years, engaged a lot with the British guys there, and then in Harvard for a year and a half at Stanford, and 4 years working at the IMF. Interacted with all of them. Come back to my example. My salary as a RBI chair professor is 3 lakh rupees a month. My maid is 3,000. Do you think I will sign a deal with my maid? Do you think so? And do you think my maid has the courage to tell me, Professor, you will wear this shirt today? Professor, you will eat this food today? Professor, you will interact with this person today? Do you think so? So, no, there is no level playing field. There can't be level playing field until you rise and become so indispensable that they have no way to go. Now, if you ask me sincerely, if the maid does not come to my home tomorrow to cook, the maid thinks Professor Singh is in trouble. But I have canteens on the campus. I have Swiggy with me. But maid will tell her colony, I haven't gone, the professor will be in trouble. I can say anything that if I don't do this, the whole of British economy will shake like this. They will not shake because we are nobody in their calculation. So let me then say, we all know the economics. There are chat GPTs and all those AI tools. You can read from there how when the East India Company come to India, we were at that point of time accounting for 25% of world GDP. When they left us, we were at that point of time around 1% of world GDP. Today we are 4%. They're also around 4%. We are catching up. But when it comes to per capita income, which is the crucial comparative statistics, we are 5% of their income. Like you would not like to sign a deal with your maid, and even if you, what deal will you sign with your maid? You will come for a full month. If you don't come, I'll cut your salary. This is the deal you will sign. That's all. Neither can the maid do it, that she claims that you do everything that she tells you, nor should you expect that you will do what the maid will tell you. So therefore, when you go and look up the British media, and I've been to Britain many, many times, when you go and look up the British media, India's presence in that media is in the last column, in the last little space of their newspaper. You are not on the front page. You are not in their middle page. So we should know where we are. That's one thing. Now, other thing that I want to say, and I'll conclude, I know there are others too, and I'm here to listen to others too. The other thing that I want to say, what have we learned? My question is very simple, and I'm going to take 1 minute on this, and I'll take 1 minute on another. 1600 to 1857, 1857 to 1947. It's a clear trajectory and a complete downfall of India. It's I'm very happy to know, a very pleasant story that we are trying to reclaim. But what have we learned that something like that doesn't happen again? Have we learned? To my mind, we have not learned. What have we not learned? On one hand, at my age, I can say, one, the intruder should not do this, fine. But the host also should not do this. As a host country, when they came as an intruder to us, how did I make the situation so pleasant that they could recover inch by inch, country by, at that time say a country, and region by region, that they could come and penetrate in our country, and in 1947 they left us. They had ruled all over the country, including the Anglo-Sikh wars. How did that happen? Have we learned? If we have not learned, I think we have to learn that within our country, there can be people who did betray us then, who did betray us between 1857 and 1947, and who can betray us even today.
You're making a very powerful statement that there are people who could betray India's national interests. Could you dwell more on that?
He has already given you one illustration, data. He has given you the illustration. So therefore, I feel any other country can step into your country and take the advantage of your country, and it's not always going to be the idols which are in $1 million. It's not always going to be your natural resources that through the train system and the ports they'll drain you. These resources change over time. The modern times is your data is one very important source. I feel within the country there can be betrayals even in terms, and I'm sorry to tell you this, even in terms of unity of the country. That's very, very important. How these forces come and play, the sleeper cells, how did things happen in Middle East are all in front of us. We need to safeguard that there are numerous examples I can give you how people come inside your country and then operate within your country. And you have to be alert and always on the safeguard that what is their interest in this country.
Right.
Now let me conclude by, let me share one statistics with you. If their per capita, and I will link up with the illustration that he gave you. If their per capita income is $50,000, mine is 2,880. I grow at 10%. I will add $288 in my income every year. They grow at 10%, they add 5,000, right? Even if they grow at 1%, they add 500, they're still double than me. Therefore, there'll never be convergence, therefore divergence, and the width between my richness and their richness continues to expand. If this is the state of affairs, obviously, then where is the win-win? Where is the thought of a win-win? There's no thought of a win-win.
Okay.
But does it mean we should not sign such agreements? No, we have to sign such agreements. But what I'm trying to tell, and I'm trying to drive at, we have to grow faster.
And we have to be more vigilant.
And we have to grow faster, and we have to rely on ourselves in growing fast. Is there an illustration? Korea is an illustration. Any other in modern times? China is an illustration.
Right. I want to come to Mr. Basu now. Do you agree with this opinion that Dr. Charan Singh has stated that we've not learned our lessons from the past of British colonialism in negotiating this treatment, this agreement?
I disagree somewhat. I agree with the general trend of what is being said, but I differ quite a bit on some of the substance. So let me start with tea. You know, unfortunately, I am the owner of a tea estate. I bought the tea estate 22 years ago and have not made a paisa of profit in 22 years. So I consider it a social welfare thing that I've done. I did not intend it to be social welfare. I intended it to be at least somewhat profitable. I have not made a single paisa. I have instead continued to invest. Anyway, all the producers of the tea are Indians.
You're taking the British legacy forward.
All the producers of the tea are Indians. They were treated like slaves under the British. They are treated somewhat better now. Their salaries have increased 5-fold in the 22 years that I have owned the tea estate, and the price that I get for my tea has only about doubled. So my profit has gone down further, as you can see. But anyway, lack of profit or loss has increased over time. Anyway, but the point is that we produce our own tea. It's Indian workers who produce the tea. So Professor Charan Singh, please.
You only bought it 20
कीजिए.
years ago.
नहीं,
And until then,
So
it's
you please
tea
start drinking tea, you'll help some Indians.
or
And
tea
the
owners.
British don't produce any tea. They try to produce some tea in
Kenya.
in Cornwall. You know, they have tried to grow some tea in Cornwall, and they cannot succeed. So therefore, the tea is all grown by us, our workers. So वो तो कीजिए.
Lassi pita.
ठीक.
Lassi is enough Indian.
So, अच्छा. So, but to get to some of the substance, I'll just say that the trade agreement, free trade agreement with the UK is mutually beneficial. It is very beneficial to India. And for the simple reason that we have very high tariff barriers relative to most other countries in the world. We are not reducing our tariff barriers immediately. What is interesting, for instance, if you look at cars, we are allowing British cars to be imported into India, but on a staggered basis. Now, the primary British car maker is owned by India. You know, Tata's own Jaguar Land Rover. So the cars that will come from Britain will be owned by an Indian company, made with British labor, and they'll enter. But even that will be on a staggered basis.
But those are the super luxury cars.
Actually, those are, I mean, Jaguar Land Rover, I mean, you know, Land Rover will compete with the SUVs. Our SUVs are much more competitive than Land Rover. So it'll take a while before Land Rovers, you know, acquire a market. In any case, they will not be allowed in immediately. They'll come in on a staggered basis. The tariffs that will come down on a staggered basis. On the other hand, we will get almost immediate duty-free access for our goods to the UK. Now, the UK is still the 6th largest economy in the world. It is a large market simply because they all earn 5 times what, 50 times, or whatever, what is the number, what the typical Indian earns. So they earn substantially more, or 20 times what the typical Indian earns. But the point is that the size of the overall market is large enough, and we are able to penetrate that market at almost a tariff-free rate. the advantage to us is that, for instance, Bangladesh dominates garment exports. If you look at our textile and garment exports to the world, they've been stagnant for the last 12 years. In fact, last 15 years, there's been almost complete stagnation in our textile and garment exports. Once we now have FTAs with the European Union and with the UK, we'll gain access, and that will substantially improve our market share in those two key markets. And given that we have a first mover advantage relative to Bangladesh, we will see a substantial gain, I think, in the next few years. Now, to go back to the historic aspects, when we look at the way China deals with its history and the way we deal with our history, there's a heaven and hell difference. If you look at, my book, Asia Reborn, actually looked at why it is that the parts of Asia that are most prosperous are the ones that were ruled by Japan. So Japan ruled Taiwan for 50 years. It ruled Korea for 35 years. It ruled what used to be called Manchuria. I mean, if it was an effective control of Manchuria for 40 years, from 1905 to 1945. And it ruled the coastal part of China for 8 years. It ruled the northeastern part of China, which is Manchuria, for 40 years. And the only parts of China that are industrialized and successful are the parts that Japan ruled.
Why so?
So, I mean, that you have to read my book. I don't want to get into that too much, but I only have 10 more minutes. So let me, but the point is, the key difference, okay, since you asked, the key difference is that Japan went to those countries to industrialize them. It wanted, of course, it wanted them partly as markets, but it went there and invested in creating industries there. So, for instance, if you look at the first ever Nissan car, the first Nissan car was not produced in Japan at all. It was produced in China. The first Nissan car plant was in Jilin province. Changchun was the city, the capital of Jilin province, and cars were produced there. In Korea, there was a Korean Shipbuilding and Engineering Corporation established by the Japanese, which is the basis for Korea to become a shipbuilder later on. There were 6 steel mills established in Korea, which helped them to acquire the technology from Japan when POSCO, Pohang Iron and Steel, was established in 1973. They already had technicians, engineers, etc., who knew how to absorb the technology and adapt it to their needs. So, on the other hand, in India, there are two things. The other point I make in the book is that the parts of India that the British ruled the longest were the poorest at independence. So the parts that the British ruled from 1757 onwards was basically Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, what is now Bangladesh, and eastern UP. And that part is by far the poorest part of India, or at least was at independence and in the year 2000. And more or less is the same now. I mean, Orissa and Assam are progressing faster. Bengal hopefully will progress after this election, etc. But the point is that eastern India is still the poorest. Coastal Andhra Pradesh, coastal Tamil Nadu, those are the parts that were ruled by Britain the longest, and they are the poorest. The parts that came under British control much later in India are wealthier. Basically, the East India Company's exploitation was severe. So, I mean, if you just I just pointed out, for instance, that the amount that was given to Lord Clive and the 16 members of the Bengal Council in 1757, after the Battle of Palashi, was, he was given by Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar, the traitor. Now, we call Mir Jafar a traitor. He wasn't an Indian. So he was from Karbala in what is today Iraq. He had no loyalty to India. So let's not make him such a villain. I mean, he was not a villain to us. He was doing his own thing, his own nest. But the point is that the amount given was greater than the total income of the king of Britain and the 400 largest landholders in Britain that year. So the total amount that they earned in that 1 year, 1757, was less than what was given to the members of the Bengal Council after just one war. And similarly, after every war, loot was basically what happened. So that is one. The second thing is the reason why Britain became the base for the first industrial revolution was simply that Britain found a country that was the most industrialized in the world. India was the most industrialized place on earth.
And they systematically...
And they systematically changed that. How did they change that? By 1708, Daniel Defoe writes that all our clothes, our cloth, our bed sheets, our linen, our curtains are all Indian stuff. In 1708, long before Polashi. Yale, Elihu Yale was a governor of Madras for 5 years. He made so much money that he established Yale University. There was a guy called Thomas Pitt. He made so much money as governor of Madras between 1698 and 1709. He made so much money that he established a political dynasty that became the dominant dynasty in Britain. His grandson became prime minister. His great-grandson was one of the longest-serving prime ministers of the 19th century. So this was the nature, this was the loot that was happening already long before even 1757. But around the same time that Daniel Defoe was saying this about all the cloth being made of Indian stuff, the British imposed a ban on imports of textiles, of textiles and garments from India, 50 years before the Industrial Revolution began. So the original sin of industrialization is that protectionism enabled it.
You think that
Okay.
if we come back, because I have less time.
So now the point is, having said that, we still should take advantage of the opportunity that we have now. And the opportunity that we have now is that the Tatas are the single largest employers in Britain, have been for the last 15 years. Vedanta is headquartered in Britain, but most of its assets are here. It also owns assets in places like Zambia, the largest copper producing country. But these are Indian companies.
But what about
and the beneficiaries,
national interest?
the national interest,
happening?
we can safeguard our national interest by continuing to exploit the opportunities that exist. Now, Professor Charan Singh quite correctly pointed to Korea. Korea is a pure export-oriented success story. And what they did was they were able to export some of those things. Cars produced initially in collaboration with Japan. But the point is, cars, steel, semiconductors, cell phones, all of these things were produced in Korea and exported to the world. Before that, by Japan, and then Taiwan, etc. All of these countries have exploited the opportunity available in the world and started closing the gap. We need to do the same thing.
I'll come back to you on this. I want to go to Professor Mahapatra. Like Mr. Prosenjit said, that the way China looks at its history is different the way
so
we look
I
at
didn't
it.
actually finish that point. You see, China says that Japan exploited us. But look at what I've just said. The exact opposite. In fact, the only parts of China that are developed are the ones that the Japanese ruled. Whereas they have created this fabulous propaganda that they are poor because of Japan. And on the other hand, we have never asked the British for any sort of
No, they
compensation.
claim they industrialized us.
And just remember, Suella Braverman former Home Secretary of the UK, has said, she has said just 2 weeks ago that India should be grateful for Britain.
Exactly
she's
my point.
She's Indian, okay? her mother, I think, is Goan, mother is Tamil and father is Goan. But she has said that India should be grateful to Britain for everything that it has.
I think that's
So
the narrative that Britain
the fact that this can be said while keeping it, without a smirk, is what is astonishing. And if you look at Western economic history, I studied in the West as well.
I'll come to you.
And the
I'll
Western
come to you.
economic history does not
Let me
acknowledge.
go to Professor
does not
Mahapatra.
acknowledge any of this stuff about how their industrial revolution was financed from the loot from
I think
India
it all
and by
boils
protectionism.
down.
All of this is
It all boils down to how we treat our past. Professor Mahapatra, he made a very relevant point that British have been saying that we industrialized India. India should be grateful to us. We gave them trains. We gave them a lot of stuff. Otherwise, it would not have been where it is. Do you think we've not taken lessons from our colonial past in making trade agreements? What's your opinion?
I just want to go a little bit on tangent. First, to answer Professor Charan Singh, but not just to answer, to take the point a little further. The key question is not just the per capita difference, it is the internal distribution. If we are much more unequal than England, a 10% of the Indian market is enough for British or any of the new imperialist power to exploit us. We are 10% owns 90% of our resources. This is the most horrendous thing that we're seeing. When we talk about national interest, the interest is only for that top 0.001% interest. So that's why I find nationalism, or the way national interest is put forward, is often a way of talking about only the particular. The
privileged.
Always. And it has become that, so that, I take Mr. Basu's point, is he's actually paid 5 times more, but you should start what are the wages of the tea laborers when he about it. He's been a gentle employer, so he's paid 5 times. Look at their wages even now.
Yes.
What is the wages now? And they had financed, millions of Indian workers have financed the tea exports, which made India the #1 tea exporter in the world, beat China. It's on the backs of these people that this was done. So, no, I have just a point about the contradictory notion of nationalism which is being talked about. Decolonization. The chaps who are talking about decolonization today were the ones who were in the hands of the colonialists. The real decolonization which happened in the 40s and 50s throughout the world, but beginning with India and to an extent China, but elsewhere into Africa till the 60s, that this mental decolonization has no relation with the actual decolonization. And that is a dangerous path we are treading right now. In the name of, and Abhijit's point is very good, but I cannot support this idea of a data nationalism. Which data colonialism, I understand. The answer to that is not data nationalism. I want my government to be more transparent than whatever now, whether it is used by England or Germany or Pakistan. I want my government to tell, and now we're seeing our government has become less and less transparent while selling, as Abhijit said, selling very important data elsewhere. So so let's look at the contradictions in this moment, where we don't have a stand. The guys who are talking about decolonization are selling our data. They're easily selling our data, but they're talking about decolonization. Decolonization symbolically, changing the name of roads symbolically, but actually selling our natural resources. In the name of the fact that we have Indians there, is Vedanta not exploiting Indian resources? Where is it, Vedanta's profits going? They are no longer, you can't call them Indian, only Indian companies. They have international locations, they are multinationals now. And their profits are not helping Indians. They are extracting, pure extractors of the colonial kind that we have seen. And Mr. Basu's point about
I'm a
Tata,
shareholder of Vedanta.
you might be a shareholder, but all
I would urge you all to buy shares of Vedanta. Company is doing very well.
I would urge you to go to Koraput, where they are destroying the most precious resources. If you have gone there, you would understand what our history is, what colonialism actually means, how they are taking over, just burning our land and destroying millions of people's livelihood in the name of getting aluminium, in the sense that national interest aluminium. National interest aluminium, but they are destroying our basis of hundreds of thousands in that region. But if you look at it, millions of people's livelihood structures. Long term, as Abhijit says, long term is actually long term. We are burning our resources to sell them. That's one. But let me just get back to the question, because sometimes might appear that Mr. Basu's point is right. But look, Clive's loot was nothing. It might appear at one time when we were studying, I don't know where he studied his economic history, it was an obsolete economic history that Clive had 400,000 pounds or British, and that was more than that. That's fine. That was, they had taken a lot of precious stones and all. Who counts what does precious stones? Then South Africa or Africa would be the richest country in the world because they have more precious stones. What is happening to that, to Lord Clive? What happened to him? Of course, he built, the Nawabs built and so on and so forth. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is not loot. The main thing is loot through trade. And that loot through trade, that means the hiding of the loot through trade in the name of free trade is the technique which was perfected in India. It began very early by connecting India's labor, that means peasant producers producing opium, which was transferred to China so that the East India Company doesn't have to pay money to buy Chinese tea. Tea has a long history, and tea is, as you know, Mr. Basu, and you are inheriting a great long history of this triangular
It's not
trade.
inherited. Huh? Mine is not inherited.
You are right now perhaps in this state. You're inheriting that trade route where tea in China became the most important thing. In order to get that, you had to make opium, and in order to do that, you had to force Indian peasants to do it. After that, it was indigo. Not cotton. It was indigo which went as dye to England. And to make that, we know that for hundreds of years, what indigo was forced to do. Indian labor was utilized alongside a new pattern of trade in which India from 1850s roughly, but 1860s onwards till 1940 continuously was utilized by Britain to take off nearly 50% or 45% of its trade imbalance. The technique was the same as India-China-Britain trade. It's a triangular trade. India was transformed from a manufacturing country to a raw material exporting country. Where was the raw material going? Raw material was not going to England. Raw material was going to rest of the world, which was industrializing. And that's where the Indian raw material goes. And England at that time is in trade deficit with the rest of the world under free trade. It allows itself to be free trade and allows India to be free trade in order to use India's balance of trade surplus to liquidate its own. If Indian surplus was not there, Britain would have been a highly indebted country at the end of the Napoleonic War. Latest research shows quite clearly that between 1790 and 1815, during the period of French Revolution onwards and all, when Britain was Anglo-French wars, India allowed Britain to be a net creditor at the end of that war. Otherwise, spending so much in the war, it still managed to carry on its industrial revolution.
Professor Mahapatra, I just want to interject.
Just pointing out, Mr. Basu is absolutely right. Indian industrial revolution has not been, we now know very well that industrial revolution, a major part was played, an important part, not all, but very important part was played by the fact that they had about 90% tariff on Indian cloth. But Britain was, they were allowed to re-export, but not to sell the cloth in India, in Britain. And after some time, it was the machine-made cloth from Britain which now competed with Indian cloth everywhere else in the world. And that's the beginning of our, what we call
I think the shipbuilding industry was another industry which was deliberately destroyed, which was doing very well in India in those times. I want to come back to the FTA, looking at the lens of the colonialism.
So let me just take you the thing. The free trade agreement, we had actually a free trade, so-called free trade regime from 1833 onwards. Actually, Indian was always had 2.5% maximum and then became 5% sometime. Tariff was, it was practically free, excepting sometimes the rest of the country, rest of the world often had to pay 10%. But generally, England had 0% duties, India had 2.5 to 5% sometimes and all. So we had a practically free trade regime between precisely the period in which what we see as Indian exploitation was the highest. Indian industrialization limited that it happened also in this period. Not because the British wanted the industrialization, but it happened during this period. The key point is the way India was structured in the new empire was of a different nature. It was now fixed under Britain's agency to supply the whole world, and not just with raw materials. The most important thing is how India's labor also got connected to this commodity circuit.
Right.
And that was the crucial connection right from the peasant, indigo peasant labor or the opium labor, then to the indentured labor. Then 30 million, 3 crore Indians went out of India to service the plantations in Southeast Asia, like Burma, Malaysia, and this area. So this circuit, global circuit, with England as its hub, was both utilizing India's raw material exports, also that was the true drain, not the loot which Clive took. That was only minuscule compared to this massive drain which took place over time. Now, there have been calculations, and I don't agree with all the calculations, but the essential calculation is that the Indians paid twice for this. That means Indians, how the Indian thing was financed? India became the biggest market and captive market for British handloom, British machine-made goods. And that allowed the Britain to have always a positive balance of trade with India throughout, while India's positive balance with the rest of the world was utilized by Britain to negate its own. So this was the new technique which was used.
I want to just take up the service sector thing that you said.
Yeah.
3 crore Indians were taken out. Mr. Prosenjit, I'll come to you as well later. Abhijit, I want to ask you, today in this FTA, how is the services sector being taken up? Do you think it's to India's advantage in terms of what Professor Mahapatra has just said?
Okay. If there is an important gain a substantial gain for India from this agreement, it's really in the services sector. Very specifically, we have concluded, and this is not part of the FTA, it's in parallel with the FTA, we've concluded something called the Double Contribution Convention, which effectively will result in a saving of about $500 million for Indian service professionals who go to UK, work in UK for a period of up to 5 years, but they are working for Indian companies in UK. So that is one benefit. But there is also further opening of service sectors by UK that could have long-term spillovers, given the fact that US is now becoming a closed services market, and there is a clear tendency whereby service providers in US are trying to shift to UK. That gives us some opportunity.
I want to go to Mr. Gonzalez now. Professor Mahapatra just talked about transparency in executing such FTAs. Do you think the government has been transparent enough in this? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I'm coming to this from a different angle altogether. My colleagues to my right are experts on the subject, and I'm a little diffident. I'm a regular lawyer practicing and doing criminal law and all that. But I have a very long and pervasive interest in human rights and so on. First of all, the notion that, you know, I mean, when we talk about how Britain exploited India, the colonial period, the masters, the victims, and so on, I don't buy that anymore. Not because it's not true, it is perfectly true. But I'm reluctant to talk about, you know, the superior way in which the British sort of exploited us Indians. Why? Because today when I see my government, today when I see our politicians, today when I see our cabinet ministers, they will betray our country worse than anything else, anybody else. There's no difference really. You can't say India abroad and so on. We betray our own people through these FTAs all the time. So let's forget about that exploitation of the past. It's important for historians, it's important for the world, it's important for our students to understand. But when we focus on these FTAs, we must look at it from a human rights angle. And see how are these guys in the cabinet, that's it. How are they getting into these agreements and then feeding certain information to the press? Our Prime Minister said day before yesterday, reported in all the newspapers, farmers are going to benefit from these FTAs. Right? Indeed. Then why don't you show us all the FTAs? Question number one. Why don't you share it with parliamentarians? If indeed it's for the benefit of farmers, health rights, patent, you know, patents will be sort of diluted a bit and so on. Why don't you share and have a public discussion? Where is the consultation that you do? But this government and this cabinet is totally top secret. They will feed you information and you'll read in the papers about how the FTAs are good because cabinet ministers are speaking to the press. And our press is sold out, you know, they're owned by industrialists. So where do you get your info? As a human rights activist and my colleagues, I talked to some of the farmers groups before I came. And I was surprised to find how many of them understood so little about what's going on in the FTAs, except for a few people.
But sir, just tell me one thing. Is it only about the current FTA or the other FTAs also?
All the time, all FTAs.
EU FTA.
From the WTO ones and so on. I remember I was in the Bombay High Court when P.B. Sawant did his case, saying that this WTO agreement is being entered into without showing it to Parliament. And the government wouldn't allow it to come up. And the court showed disinterest. So not only is Parliament kept in...
You're talking about 1993?
Way back, yes, the old agreement. And I thought to myself as a very lay person, without really understanding, you have the WTO agreement on agriculture, you have WTO agreements on health rights, and all this happens without showing it to Parliament. That's one side, right? Secrecy. Our own people, and the principle that I would enunciate, our own people are our biggest enemies in government. It's not the British. I mean, they are, no doubt. The American government is our enemy. They want to come in with an FTA and do things to our farmers that we can't even imagine. Our own people are our biggest enemies. That's one. Now, from a human rights point of view, we need to, members of the public, all of you need to look and understand and sort of separate the wheat from the chaff and try and look at it from a human rights point of view. Our farmers' friends are very agitated, not so much by the UK FTA for some reason, perhaps it's not so, this part is not so damaging, but by the American FTA and so on. Because simply put, America seeks to, it has a huge lot of grain and rice and so on, and it sees India as a great place to put it in. And I have a feeling a time will come. I have a feeling where this government will not really stand up for farmers' rights at all. Now, secrecy. So when I try to look at it, my friends are better placed. They are in the academic world, so they have access, they know who to talk to, they know who to get information from. But when I try to look, there's an iron curtain. There's an iron curtain put across, shielding what the cabinet does, what this government does, shielding that from the people who are affected. Now, you look across the world, I thought this is strange that India can say the cabinet will decide, the cabinet will draft, the cabinet will negotiate, we'll talk to few people here and few people there, and ultimately.
But what does our constitution say in that respect?
The constitution is ambiguous. Let's say it is, for example, the leading judgment of the court interpreting the constitution and its treaty part says, if the government does something in a treaty which affects the lives of ordinary people, affects their lives meaning affects their constitutional right to life under 21, then you must have legislation. Now this is the subject matter of a lot of dispute, but I thought Magan Bhai hit it on the head. You're doing a treaty, Mr. Prime Minister. It's going to affect farmers. Patent rights is going to affect the health of people right through the country. You've got to have legislation. And to have legislation, you must go before Parliament and say, this is my treaty. You give it to the opposition parties and let's have a discussion in transparency. But it's top secret. It's absolutely top secret.
But sir, my point is, if this has not happened in the past or with other earlier governments, then why would this government do it?
The government will do it, but the government will not do it. You're absolutely right. This government has no interest in transparency. This government has no interest in the human rights of the poor. All right, Jaguar and cars and this and that and liquor.
And the scotch and the whiskies.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't drink. Otherwise, I would have supported this.
Yeah, I also. I support.
Now look, the secrecy part, and I'll finish on this. I try to look at what countries across the world are doing on placing it before Parliament. Having a Parliament debate, not just Parliament, how the executive is bound to go to the opposition and give them and say, come for a debate in public, and then you'll see what people are saying, right? And I looked at a whole range. The US has the Senate looking at your treaties. I don't think today, in this day and age, you can tell the American public, listen, Senate will not look at it. What Trump says, we will do. Nothing doing. The UK, subject to ratification and approval by Parliament.
So that is an interesting part. The country that we are dealing with actually takes approval from the Parliament, and we do not do that.
Yeah, which is also a point I want to make about our colonial past. When you look at the colonial past and our present ministers, in some ways, in food, in hunger, in many ways, police, power of the police, we are worse than the British today. And we must have the courage to stand up and say, police reform they did, colonial power, that did Jallianwala Bagh and killings and all that.
Sir, also judicial reforms. They don't have these many leaves for their judges like we have. I want to come back to Dr. Charan Singh. I'll come back to you.
One last thing. Look at the countries which give it to Parliament. Nepal went through and has a new constitution. has to go through parliament. Uganda has to go through parliament. South Africa, rigorous parliamentary approval. Colombia, legislative approval, constitutional court approval. Kenya, parliamentary scrutiny. Country after country in the modern world is not accepting this principle that a tyrannical government, which I use that term deliberately, a dictatorship kind of government can make their treaties and do whatever they want. No, sir, it's not possible. It's bad.
Right. I'll come back to you. Dr. Charan Singh, I want your opinion on what he just said, that the government should make it public, it should be ratified by the parliament, there should be debate, discussion. What is your opinion? Because you've been part of trade negotiations, you've been at WTO. Why it's not here?
No, I was part of IMF, not WTO. WTO,
Okay,
he was
okay.
there.
I stand
but
corrected.
But because I have to leave at 1, as you know, so I'm just going to make a few observations. I'll take your question. The first thing that I want to say is, I'm not against an FTA. Regionalism has started. Global scenario has changed very badly, but UK is a shrinking economy. You know they have come out of Brexit, and since then they're shrinking. As fate would have it, they're going to shrink further. The treaty that the FTA that has been done, as you have rightly put, the wine, the luxury cars, marine products and all that, but I think India has to look much more than that if you want to really benefit nook and corner of the country. Treaty with the FTA with America, I'm eagerly looking forward to, because American size is 10 times my size. So anything that I can supply there will benefit me. But you know that what has been in the newspaper doesn't seem to be really very conducive for India to growth. I come back to the same point. Me as RBHA professor and my maid, I am on a very weak footing in any bargaining, and therefore I have to take the dictates, as he summarized it, I think very well in his last, the Supreme Court advocate, that if America says you buy this, because I'm on such a weak footing in terms of bargaining. Now, Professor Mahapatra ji, you know, when we talk of income inequalities, and if I remove the top rich of my country, my per capita income will collapse from 2,880 to 2,000. My argument becomes far more sharper, that they are 50,000 and I am 2,000.
Less than
now,
2,000.
So my bargaining is so little and tiny because I'm worse than the maid. I also want to make one point, and I want to make it, means if you are a student of economic history, then you would have read a lot about it. Income inequalities, unfortunately, are integral part of economic growth. Unfortunately, it should not be. Taxation is used to equalize the incomes, but unfortunately it is. But I have been telling my students, I have been arguing with my own self, that even in Satyug, when Ramji was there, Lord Ram, there was Bhilni.
Treta.
Bhilni. And when Lord Krishna was there in Treta, we had Sudama. So therefore, income inequalities have been there for many, many generations. We have to live with it. And the last point I want to make is my own hypothesis, and I want to write a book. I'm so happy I'm sitting next to the author. Maybe one day I'll be blessed with the same energy and I'll write a book. Why did British leave India? My hypothesis of that book is because they had nothing more to exploit here. They had drunk our blood. They have taken away our body organs. They had sucked through our bone marrow. There was nothing left, and they thought to run the administration is more expensive than get the revenue.
How do you find the British today?
I will join the... Well, I'm not starting my tea, and that should answer that question. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I want to go to...
Another meeting too.
So you have to leave for a meeting. Okay, thank you so much for being with us. One small answer I'd like from you before you leave. Do you think we should have something like a day of remembrance for what we've been through for our colonial experience?
I'll be very honest with you. As I've told you,
Sorry.
as I've told you, on one hand, there is a day of remembrance that who exploited us. But there is the same day, also have to remember the ones who betrayed us. And as the the advocate is telling us, we do not know, Mir Jafar is one name, but Mir Jafar was not the only one who betrayed us.
And he was not an Indian.
That is an excuse. That is an excuse.
bizarre.
Tomorrow,
Nothing got an Indian.
no, tomorrow Tata in UK will say that I am not a British guy. That's not an argument which is valid. He was working in India at that point of time. He was eating the Indian food. He was very much an Indian. You can't work for the Indian government, say I don't have Indian passport, therefore I can be loyal to the others. I don't buy that argument. And if Ratan Tata says that similar in UK, saying that look, I'm not a British guy, so I can exploit the Jaguar, I'm an Indian, that argument won't work. But all I'm trying to say is the Day of Remembrance is a good idea, but more than the Day of Remembrance of the looters, I'm much more worried about the betrayals. So if you want to have a Day of Remembrance, I would also like to flag those people who betrayed us, otherwise no intruder can come and strike a root in our country. It's a very sad history, colonial history, it's very sad. I want to conclude by one thing. I was very thrilled when I see the new buildings coming up. I've hardly ever lived in Delhi, now that I'm here. I'm very thrilled that I see the new buildings coming up, and the North Block and South Block, which is the British legacy, are now going to turn into museums. I had suggested that when I was a professor at IIM Bangalore about 10 years ago. I'm lucky, hundreds must have thought the same. I'm sure the government must have heard all of us and taken that decision. On 15th August, should we still use the ramparts of the Red Fort? After 75 years of India's independence, I have no place to address my countrymen. I think the government, and I'm going to tweet that today, I think the country has to think that if 75 years later you still have to use the rampart of the Red Fort, our growth strategy needs a revisit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charan Singh.
Sir, just a simple question, because you are an economist and you have done that. Sir, do we have to live with inequality? Our constitution, our national movement was built on the idea of promoting equality. Now, you can say, but isn't this obscene inequality? Are we not going through, has it been in our history during the Mughals or even before that, have we had this type of inequality?
Yes, we had.
No,
That's why I gave you,
Sir,
I'm ready for a 2 hours length discussion on this, but let me conclude by one line. That's why I've given you an illustration of Sudama. I gave you an illustration of Bhilni, but the ones who attempted saying there should be no inequality is the Russians and the Chinese, and they very quickly abandoned that principle and said even under the communist regime, the socialist regime, where the main hypothesis is everybody is equal, they were not able to enforce equality, unfortunately. Modern economic theory says you can use the taxation and subsidies to bring about equality. Now that can get misused, as the advocate has very clearly mentioned, that unless there is intention of bringing in equality through the two, taxation and subsidies, inequalities will continue to widen. Unfortunately, that is the truth, historically. Thank you.
I mean, the simple fact is that
any study of inequality
China,
shows that
communist China, is much more unequal than India. The Gini coefficient is much higher. Communist China is much more unequal. If you want to have examples of countries that are less unequal in income distribution, Japan, Korea and Taiwan are much more equal in income distribution than China is. China is far more unequal. Now, if you look at India's Gini coefficient, it's actually about the same as Japan's, by the way. So our Gini coefficient, I mean, it's World Bank data, it is fairly well known, published.
World Bank data is Indian data.
Well,
has it got independent data? It gets data from the government.
So you're saying India is an equal country?
It is not an equal country at all. But the inequality, the Gini coefficient, it's measured everywhere by the same method. And India's number is around 35 or 36, 0.35, 0.36, which is much lower, that is, it is more equal than China. China consistently has been
it's as equal as
around
Japan.
0.4. So, you know, the theory that communism is somehow going to be resulting in greater equality is disproved
I
by
want
the
to
fact.
go to Chandani. She's been waiting since a long time now.
She should have, really, yes.
Chandni, what is your take on the current FTA in terms of, because you come from the British Colonial Museum, how has, in your experience, the colonial experience that India has had worked here, in favor or against us?
First of all, I must thank Urdu Media for having me. This has been a masterclass. Getting to learn about the FTA from luminaries like the ones that I am sharing the stage with. Very, very honored. Thank you very much, Divya, for having me over. With regards to the FTA, and I'll tell you why I come into the picture. Every day, reading is decreasing by 20%. That means the current generation of people are not getting to read the wonderful work that luminaries here are doing. They are not reading it to the extent to which they should be reading. And this is where organizations like ours, we have I can see Itihasology founder sitting here, we have Karwa Heritage, we have the Museum of British Colonialism. We are working to make sure that the information that is being shared by people who have devoted all their lives to this reaches audience who's not even able to concentrate on their screen for 0.7 seconds. So this is where organizations like ours come into the picture. With regards to the FTA, after having read essays that have been shared by people who I'm sharing the stage here with, I've understood that people today, because 0.7 seconds is our concentration, we tend to focus on catchphrases, mother of all trade deals. Yeah. And that is what the average Indian is doing, acha, bahut acha chal raha hai, and they go forward with it. Now it is the responsibility of mediators like ourselves, who are from this generation, who speak, as they say, the Gen Z lingo, to read through the entire 2000 worded essay, simplify it, and tell the audience why is it that we need to go beyond the 0.7 seconds and concentrate on it and ask questions. Data has already been shared. People here have worked on it, so I'm not going to add to it. What I've understood is that there's this thing called, which was also raised in this wonderful panel, about environment taxes. So there's this tax called CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and they've said in the trade that 99% of our things would be tariff-free, which sounds great. That means, as we say, that we're coming on an equal footing. But the moment you've put something like the CBAM on the picture, you've introduced a non-tariff tax on Indian exports. We must realize this, that we've only been independent in 1947. Our industries only started growing 75 years ago. Jo aaj climate change ho raha hai is not because of us, it's not because of the developing countries. The 2.5 degree Celsius that the world forums are asking us to keep a temperature within, it's not been contributed by developing countries like ours, it's been contributed by developed countries that have imposed this caveat on us and are also imposing taxes on us. Which brings me back to what has happened 200, 300 years ago, when they said, okay, we can have Indian goods in Britain, but uspe custom tax lagega, ya custom duty lagegi. So we're back to following what has happened at that point of time. So this is where organizations like the Museum of British Colonialism, like Karwa Heritage, Itihasology, we come into picture. We read through the books that have been written by these people who have devoted so much of their life to it, understand it to the best of our knowledge, and then simplify it and bring it to people.
Like you said, Chandni, that environment is one space where we should have paid more attention to. Which are the other spaces where you think India kind of sold out or did not negotiate well?
Sold out, though, I would not say, because like we've already been discussing, we are not equals. So we have to take the shorter end of the stick. The one thing that I believe we've compromised at or are leaning to compromise towards is, if we read through what has happened in the last 20 years, we've been very particular about data localization. Like Professor Das said, data is the new oil. And suddenly, and one of the reasons why we were not able to sign the FTA with EU for the past 20 years, ab jaake we've been able to do it, is because they were not happy with our IPR regulations. Now suddenly we've decided to sell our data away, in a way. Data localization is not there anymore. Yes, we have double tax avoidance agreement. NRIs are very happy. People who are getting remittances, we are also very happy that we're getting remittances. But look at the larger picture. Data localization was one of the points that we clashed with. We said, okay, we are not going to share our data.
Why do you think we've given in on this?
We've given in on this because we want to show progress. अगर हम लोग trade deal नहीं कर रहे हैं, that means we're not equals. We're still servile to the audience. Doing a trade deal means we're shaking hands with them. We have a seat at the table. Now, what are the conditions of coming to that seat at the table? That is something that only the experts would be able to understand. But बाहर से देखने में लग रहा है that we have a seat at the table. So we have to show progress. And that progress has come to us, will always come to us at some compromise or the other. Data localization है, environment tax है, but at least we're getting a seat at the table. So I will not be taking a very stark position here. Is it absolutely wrong? Is it absolutely right? What I want to do through this panel and through our work at the organization is to tell people that read beyond that catchphrase and the headline, mother of all trades, India at equal footing, sab acha hai. Yeah, the other, on the flip side, everything is bad with us, we've sold ourselves. Read the 1,000 words that
Read the fine print.
Please do that. And if you're not able to do that, then follow our pages on social media, we'll explain it to you.
Professor Das is to leave. I know you have an engagement. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your valuable perspective.
Apologies for leaving early.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I want to come back to Mr. Gonzalez again. Like Dr. Charan Singh, who left, said that, we should be cognizant of the people who betrayed us. You think the current government is doing something that is betraying national interest, or you think that things can be rectified?
See, I certainly don't condemn a free trade agreement wholesale. When it's business, and so on, I really have no expertise, and I have no real interest in criticizing a free trade agreement where people are bargaining at equal terms in the line of business. But I think we put a lot of emphasis on certain things that are not so relevant to the debate, and we don't look at human rights at all. And if you don't look at human rights, the public interest and so on, if you don't keep your attention on that, you will miss a very important poison in the treaty. Now that poison will not be removed by the government itself. The government is quite used to dealing with that poison and administering poison to its own people. Either you look at farmers' rights, you look at patents, you look at a whole range of things. Government is not going to be the one who will correct what is happening in the free trade agreements at all. Government will participate with the other side in doing things to the Indian people that they suffer. Because the business community in India is not particularly worried. If the farmers in the Punjab or the farmers in the country are virtually undermined or finished off, if their employment goes down...
You think it'll affect the agriculture?
I think free trade agreements is the big poison in the treaty. And it's the biggest enemy of the farmers in the country.
You're talking about the UK FTA?
I'm talking, you go to any, you talk USA FTA may be even worse. The alternative...
I'll come to you.
Yeah, the idea that we must now shrink our agriculture.
Yes.
Follow the European
model.
Shift everybody into cities, right? And why do you need to produce all this stuff? You can import it from the USA, you can import it from...
But sir, the argument is that our agriculture products will get bigger markets in UK, in US and other countries.
That is not going to be the... I don't see it.
No.
Okay. Let Prasenjit come in. Yeah. Okay.
I see the decimation of farmers.
Yeah.
So the decline and impoverishment of farmers will accelerate under the FTAs, and you will have a big enemy. The government will have a very big enemy of the entire farming community in India when they go through these FTAs.
Because the impression that is created is that 99% of the exports will get benefit through this FTA. Your thoughts, Prasenjit? You want to counter that?
Look, I don't know if any of you have lived in the US. My daughter lives in New York. I can tell you that the cost of a liter of milk in New York is 5 times what it is in Delhi. It is about 7, 8 times what it is in Kolkata. And I was just in the tea estate last week. The cost of everything is even lower there. So in agriculture, India is highly competitive. The most ridiculous thing that is being said is that India cannot compete in agriculture. In dairy, we are super competitive.
And we are
Our
super
dairy
protective
products,
also.
you know, our dairy products are tremendously, are lower cost than anywhere in the world. Our, in terms of manufacturing, okay, now the other thing is that people, you know, we are often told that India has missed the Industrial Revolution. India is the 5th largest industrial power in the world. We are the 2nd biggest producer of steel, aluminium, cement in the world. We are the 4th largest producer of cars, of vehicles. We're the 4th largest oil refiner. We are, you know, so if you look at industry, India has a very successful industry. Where we have failed in industry is in creating jobs. The ironic aspect is that every country, starting with the Industrial Revolution in the UK, you know, Charles Dickens was writing about the exploitation of children and so on and so forth, horrible conditions in the factories. But the point is that every industrial revolution has been a labor-intensive industrial revolution, except ours. After the, we often talk about India's share of world GDP. It was 24.4% when the British arrived in 1750.
Some people say it was 34%.
Yeah. No, it was 34% in 1500. It was 24.4%. And when the British left India, India's share of world GDP was 4.5% in 1947. It reached 3% in 1990. So if you want to know who did damage, the Nehruvian family did enormous damage. Even worse, 4.5% in 1947. In 1990, it was 3% of GDP. 3% of GDP is a simple fact.
Charan Singh just said it was 1.5%. You can read that.
That is false.
I don't know. You are bringing in data. You are just telling data, which is you are manufacturing it.
I am not manufacturing it.
Show the data. Na?
Yes.
Show the data.
Yes, I'll show the data.
Just pure propaganda for certain.
It's not propaganda. It's a fact.
Listen.
It has now reached 7% of GDP.
Let's cool down. Let's cool down.
You just said India is more equal than China. Which data are you showing from there?
Yes, it's well known.
I'm showing you world inequality.
Shut up.
No,
shut up.
No,
listen. World inequality lab data.
Professor Mahapatra, let's
Thomas Piketty is not the be-all and end-all. World inequality database is nonsense. World Bank publishes data for all countries.
Thomas Piketty does the best.
Thomas Piketty is a communist. Let us forget about it.
So what's wrong with being a communist?
Yeah, okay.
So
we are now the communists have failed the world.
We are all communists.
Okay, well done.
If telling that people should live a more equal life, and you are saying no, I am a communist.
I think let's get the lawyer to close the
communists have failed.
The
communists have failed. The Soviet Union collapsed because communism failed. Deng Xiaoping was called capitalist roader by Mao Zedong. He was called a capitalist roader. China is a capitalist country now.
I think
Please
there
understand.
is no end to this
Under
argument.
communism, China utterly failed.
Do you know what communism is?
I'll just like
yes,
communism
is a theory.
I'll just like to wrap this by giving the concluding argument to Mr. Gonzalez, the lawyer, sir. I thought you might be witnessing this in the courtrooms.
Yeah, I thought.
Sorry.
This is the best part of the entire thing. Why? Because you've got people to talk frankly from their hearts. Yeah. Right? We're not going round and round and round.
What a nice way to put it, sir.
He spoke from his heart. I spoke from my heart. It's good. And I think for the audience at least, and those who will watch it later, when you hear the discussion and hear sharp points of view, sir, we appreciate your point of view. I
think we can agree to disagree. I have some, I like to take some questions from the audience members if anybody wants to put it. Yeah, yes, sir. Can we have a mic?
Myself, Dr. Satyendra, I am a retired IFS officer and working in the field of climate and disaster resilience. My question was with Professor Das, who has already left, but other experts are there. That is regarding the data. He mentioned something about data, that we are selling our data. मुझे एक बात समझ में नहीं आ रही है कि डाटा से क्या मतलब है. डाटा आजकल सभी एवरीथिंग इज फ्रीली अवेलेबल. आप कहीं भी जाइए. आप अभी आप यदि मैं किसी चीज़ की बात करता हूँ, दिस माई मोबाइल इज हैविंग ऑल इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट मी.
I think it was about data localization, if I'm not wrong.
So if I could just point out, I think
मेरे ख्याल में ये डाटा की बात तो एकदम कोई मतलब इसका कोई तर्क नहीं है. हाँ. अच्छा, दूसरा मेरा पॉइंट है, यहाँ हमारे ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट के लॉयर बैठे हुए हैं, एडवोकेट बैठे हुए हैं. ह्यूमन राइट्स का सबसे ज़्यादा वायलेशन यदि कहीं होता है तो हमारे कोर्ट्स में होता है. नहीं, सच है. तारीख पे तारीख. मेरे को अभी मैं एक केस लड़ रहा हूँ, मेरे को 14 साल हो गए उस केस को लड़ते हुए. इसमें कोई मतलब नहीं है. इट्स हॉरिबल. गरीब आदमी का किस तरह से एक्सप्लॉयटेशन होता है. आप जैसे कोर्ट के अंदर घुसते हैं, सबसे पहले आप जज साहब यहाँ बैठे रहेंगे, उसके नीचे 10 रुपये दे के तारीख लगवा लेगा.
Sir, you are in the dock.
This is actually. तो हम ह्यूमन राइट्स की बात करें, सबसे पहले हमारे
yes,
कोर्ट को देखना चाहिए.
सर को सुन लेते हैं. आपका जवाब.
लेट मी कंप्लीट. तीसरा मेरा जो सबसे अहम मुद्दा है, जो कि भारत सरकार को उठाना चाहिए, वो है क्लाइमेट जस्टिस का. जैसे मैडम, आपका क्या नाम है मैडम? चांदनी जी ने उठाया जो मुद्दा, वो बहुत रेलिवेंट है. हम उसको उतना नहीं कर रहे हैं जितना कि पॉल्यूशन, जितना हम लोग ग्रीन हाउस गैसेज वगैरह जो निकल रही हैं. वी हैव नथिंग टू डू, बट वी आर पेइंग फॉर दैट. सो दैट इज द वर्स्ट थिंग. Climate and disaster, because I have been working in the field of climate and disaster management and international experts. मैंने 15 मुल्कों में काम किया है. जो जितने developing countries हैं, they are the worst sufferer of that.
Definitely, that's a very valid point. Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, you're absolutely right. Because I'm wearing black coat doesn't mean I support. You know what I mean? You're absolutely right. Supreme Court has let us down. Judiciary has let us down on treaty. पीबी सावंत एक रिटायर्ड जज था, उसने गया सुप्रीम कोर्ट में कि ये WTO एग्रीमेंट हुआ कैसे. ना आपको बताया, ना पार्लियामेंट को बताया, ना ऑपोजिशन पार्टी को बताया. और पार्लियामेंट WTO has come into India. Now WTO operates how, sir? WTO is a body of law. पार्लियामेंट का लॉ हम सब जानते हैं how it happens. How WTO became a body of law? It is the binding body of law. This is the trick played by the capitalists in India and across the world. You will slowly bring in by treaty. Okay? This is a legal body, WTO, and your parliament is being bypassed. No, I'm saying, I'm replying, it is a duty of the Supreme Court when these cases came. Ki, sir, can you have a treaty? Can you have a treaty which is affecting ordinary people, which violates human rights? And the Supreme Court said no. Supreme should have said, like other countries' courts have said, Colombia has said, other countries, when you have a treaty, sir, you will bring it before the Constitutional Court. Constitutional Court will read and say, this is in keeping with Constitution. Kisi ka human rights ka ullangan nahi hai. It is clear. It is in keeping with the Constitution. It honors human rights. You may take and ratify the treaty. Otherwise, no. Without the Supreme Court looking at it, WTO is deadly opposed. All these treaty people who are involved in treaty, totally opposed. Don't show it to Supreme Court. Don't show it to opposition. Don't show it to state governments. Mr. Prime Minister, you do it quietly and do a Zabardast treaty, which will affect you, and you. But do it. That is what is happening in India.
But sir, my point that I want
to thank you for holding this meeting. Very timely meeting. So that people can understand.
But sir, like I said earlier also, if the governments have been doing this regarding the FTAs with other countries, then why just one government?
Which one did it?
I'm saying the other governments.
Where is the FTA? FTA first was EU FTA recently.
There was one FTA-like agreement with this.
There have
It's
been
all
4 or
happened with
5 FTAs in the recent past by this government, right? Before this,
that,
the other
WTO
governments
is
must
from
have
the
done
1990s.
agreements.
I gave you the list, man. I gave you the list of 10, 15 countries. When the FTA comes and the government is looking at it, the FTA is sent to a joint parliamentary committee. There are various measures. It is scrutinized by parliament. It is scrutinized by constitutional court. It is discussed in parliament. And at the end, after the debate is over, then the FTA is signed. Here the Prime Minister will sign it in the beginning.
Okay. Any more questions we have?
I have one, yeah. Today, the purpose of being here was the long shadow of the empire. So what we felt from the panelists was that we are still under imperialism and colonialism. So what is the way out? What is the future for the Gen Zs?
So we have become the imperialists. We were the victims of imperialism, but today we have become imperial-minded, and in our actions. India is not just a backward developing country.
That's
We're a powerful imperialist force.
I think it's a strong statement. We are left with very less time. I'll have to wind up. Just one question.
Now, may I just answer this question?
Okay.
The simple fact is, the situation earlier in the 19th century was when India was not, it was Britain which was investing in India, that too relatively less. It invested far more in Australia, Canada, where the white people are. It invested relatively less in India. That is a very, very interesting fact. We are not exploited because of over-investment, relatively less compared to many other countries. But what is interesting is you should look at how much India is investing in UK. You see, how much India is investing in UK, how much Indian investment is happening outside India. So we have shifted. That ground has shifted. We are under a colonial hangover of another kind. It is not in our mind. It's not, well, we are all the time, it's only the white people who are, we are, because we are actually under we have shifted our ground, our national sovereignty idea of independence and not to be aligned with other countries. That shift has actually led to a lot of problems. And within that, like FTA, Abhijit has left. In the FTA, at least as far as I could make out, one big thing, Chandni's pointed out the environment question. One big thing is, he said, well, you know, the labor is actually, you should look at the labor thing. They don't want Indian labor to go and stay there and settle there. Come, work here, come back. They don't want any more semi-skilled labor, which was earlier going. The Sardarjis who went were not high-tech engineers, but they made England as it is. But today, they have become, not a single thing have they changed excepting this double social contribution. In fact, it's become more onerous. So I think it's a very targeted for a very specific group of people. They want the services. It is good for us to
I think it could be targeted for the skilled group,
very
highly skilled.
With this, ma'am, I just have a quick question.
No, our guests are here only. You can ask them individually because
actually it is directly related to what Saraj said. It is about.
We are very short of time.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's been a very engaging discussion. But I want to wrap up by putting forward a thought. India does not have any day for remembrance of what happened during colonialism. Does this panel think that we should have something like this going forward as national historical awareness?
We should have. We should have, you remember Jallianwala Bagh? You remember the Gujarat riot at the same time.
Yeah.
That's how we should remember.
Thank you, sir. So your thoughts?
I would say also the Bengal famine, which was actually the biggest, because India's food was diverted for British war, and it's not been repaid. If there is real repayment, that should have been repaid. How do they repay when millions of, I don't know how many, 30 million people or 43 million people died in that thing. So that's one remembrance. But I think
if you are truly going to get out of your colonial hangover, we must equate what Colin said, the Jallianwala Bagh and the Gujarat riot. We should equate them. That means we are getting over the hangover by saying, look, we know what the colonialists did is also equally something which happened here. So I think that is, I would support Colin's thing, but also add the amount of famines which happened under the British.
A lot of atrocities happened. We paid a very huge price.
Yeah, famines. There were a lot of.
Yes, Chandni.
I agree with the panel. One needs to understand that our history is not linear. We were not under the British at the same time. We are a very diverse country. We've been ruled by different colonial powers.
We had the Portuguese, we had the
Portuguese,
Dutch.
the Dutch, the Danes, the French for a very long period of time.
Very small, very small.
Very small.
But then we can't zero in on one day. There was this discussion of maybe thinking of 1857 as a day for remembrance. But 1857, when we read that in detail, we realize that it was concentrated in the northern part of India, that too in provinces directly under the British, not the princely states. So we can, I agree with the esteemed panel here, we can have multiple days to commemorate colonialism, which also is reflective of the diverse and the myriad nature of colonialism that we've had in our country. So multiple days, yes.
Prosenjit.
Well, you know, we can talk about colonialism and keep, you know, we need to remember what actually happened. And we need to tell the world what happened and convince the world to understand what happened to us. You know, we talk about the Bengal famine of 1943. There was a Bengal famine of 1770.
Yeah.
In 1770, 1/3 of the population of Bengal, 1/3 of British Bengal's population died in a famine. And in fact, you know, that famine, the result of that famine was that by 1772, 1773, the revenue coming from India to Britain declined so much that there was a global recession, because the gold from India came down so much that the money supply in the British Empire shrank, and it led to the imposition of taxes on the American colonies. And so the so-called Boston Tea Party was actually a result of the Bengal famine of 1770, and that eventually led to American independence and then the beginning of the end of the British Empire. But the point is that the British exploited us. We now need to move on. If you really want to talk about Jallianwala Bagh and other
When you say we need
atrocities,
to move on,
I think the atrocities, you know, I lived in Delhi in 1984. I was in college during the Sikh atrocities against Sikhs in this city and across the country. So we should be remembering those too. 3,000 at least died. And so if you really want to get into what Colin Gonzalez is saying, that too, why only remember this? Now, the point is, but what happened during colonialism, Jallianwala Bagh is just a small microcosm. Far more, I mean, the famine of 1770.
There were so many incidents.
You know, there were famines right through the 19th century, which killed a total
millions
of about
of people.
80 million people. To remember all that is important. Commemorating it in a particular day may or may not serve the purpose, but we need to understand history and understand the data behind history as well. You know, I'm surprised that Professor Mahapatra does not know the basic story.
Let's not get into those arguments again.
And
you know, I don't want to start it again.
It is so sad.
At least I was
that
trained in history, not you.
Yeah. You think so? You think so? You were not. I'm sorry.
You haven't read a single book which is of new thing. You haven't read. You're not trained, so don't talk to me. You have no idea about the data, nothing from which you're saying.
Let's have a photo op before we wind up.
What sources? Sorry.
I feel sorry for your students, really. Mr. Mahapatra has been a Marxist historian, teaching nonsense to the students.
What about your readers? What about your readers?
I would like to mention that we would like to felicitate Mr. Collins, sir, We were not able to do that initially. So please, sir, Divya ma'am from Urzu Media would be doing that. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today despite your extremely strict schedule. Can we, yeah, I would request all the panelists to join for a group photograph. Despite
I want to give the mic to Divya or Brajesh to conclude.
Well, I don't think anything is left for the vote of thanks. Most of the people have already left. But thank you so much for being a wonderful audience and giving a lot of time to this particular event. I would like to thank all our respected panel speakers, organizing committee members. With this thought, on behalf of the entire organizing committee as well as our speakers, we would like to initiate and propose National Day of Commemoration of Victims of Colonialism. It's an effort. We would like all of you to go back and think about how this conversation gone. Have you remembered the people who have lost their life in British colonization? So this is our initiative. We would like all of you to come forward and talk about it. And if you agree with our thoughts, please go on our website and check more about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And with that note, I would like to announce that there's lunch downstairs in Juniper Hall. Please go ahead, have your lunch, and thank you so much, everyone. This is Rashmin Bhardwaj, your host for the day, signing off.